Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Jewish Divorce Project. I'm your host, Noam Rauscher.
And I'm your host, Leeron.
Join us as we kvetch
and kvel about Judaism and divorce from our perspective as two Jewish professionals and two divorce coaches.
and two Jewish parents with lots of experience and plenty of opinions.
Hello, welcome to episode 80 of the Jewish Divorce
80
Project.
is greaty.
Yes, we made it to 80.
80 is greaty. Even though some may
exciting.
say it's for Brady, but I think it's for Grady, for being great.
Being
We're
great.
This is great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi, how are you? Good to see you again after such a break.
I know we
Has
had.
it been like a break? It's been like
No.
2 weeks, right?
No, I think we were here last week, didn't we?
Were we? No.
No,
we
skipped
were
a
not
week.
here last week.
We did skip a week, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Welcome back.
I'm glad we remembered that.
You know what? I'm a little out of it. I think it's the time change. Daylight savings.
Come on. There's
little tired.
such personal trauma around this.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, I lost so much, more so than an hour.
I saw a funny meme that said that hour we lost was the time I was trying to get my shit together. The hour I was allocating to getting my shit together.
That's very you, by the way.
I did not write it,
And
but
the
I thought it was
constant flow,
hilarious.
the Zen flow of getting one's shit together. Constant
Liked
Marie
it.
Kondo of one's spiritual life.
Yeah. I had a very spiritual day yesterday. I went
Did you?
to my one of my favorite places to ecstatic dance.
Ooh.
I haven't gone since it's been warm.
You do ecstatic dance frequently?
Yes. Do you know what that is?
I know exactly what it is. It's ecstatic dancing.
It's Sundays
Dancing,
on
that's
the beach
ecstatic.
in Venice Beach. It's
Uh-huh.
a silent disco. We wear the headsets
Oh, awesome.
with a DJ, but
Nice.
there's a whole meditation
Silent
in the
disco is
beginning.
a lot of fun.
It's really fun. And there's a whole circle in the beginning. We gather, we set our intentions, and then you just dance and just free dancing.
How many different channels were you listening to?
No, it's just one with a
Just one.
DJ who's everybody's
Oh, I
together.
see.
But the best is when random people are walking down the street and are just like walking in the midst of these people dancing, and they're like, "What the hell?"
Is it at sunrise?
No, it's before sunset. It's in the afternoon.
Oh, I see. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And it was a gorgeous day at the beach. Just sorry for
yeah.
everyone who is not in California.
Oh,
It
man.
was absolutely beautiful.
I went to the Arboretum and it happened to be something going on with the Pasadena Humane Society. So there were all these dogs out there and it was great. It was just like being at my own private dog show where I got to see all these amazing different breeds, and just got to be around them. It was fantastic. It was a lot of fun.
Nice. Nice.
A lot of fun. How's life treating you otherwise? Are you dating now?
Actually, I got hit on and met this guy. I don't think he's like the one.
At
or
ecstatic
anything.
dancing?
No, in a parking lot.
Even better.
I actually was.
This story
I
has
was taking
class
a
written
different
all over
workout.
it.
I was taking a different workout class, and I was walking out to my car, and I was just feeling all good and confident and whatever.
It was after
Right.
the gym.
Yeah,
Okay, pheromones are
get-
going.
I get in the car.
Right.
Yeah, but also who looks cute when you go to the gym? I wasn't
It
trying.
depends. Okay.
wasn't trying, but anyways.
Okay. Well,
So I
clearly it worked.
So I don't know. So this guy just walked over to my car. Apparently he saw me walking out feeling like I'm like the shit, right? I was feeling so good.
Was this
and
before daylight savings time
Yes.
or after?
before?
So you had your shit together
I had
because you
my
had
shit
that extra
together.
hour.
Yeah.
Really, that's what worked.
That's what it was. No, but it was just I was
haven't
really
been hit on
he
since.
literally walked over and was like, "You just walked out with such confidence. I just had to come say hello and meet you."
Wow.
And just for doing that, I
Look
had
at
to give
that.
him my number.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that. That's wonderful.
I was like, that takes a lot of guts.
Look
and
how to walk.
guys don't
in
do
order to
that
get
very
someone's phone number.
often.
That's really cool.
Guys don't just go up and ask, and he knew what he wanted, and
So have
kinda
you
cool.
guys met up since?
we went on a date.
Uh-huh.
He's cool. I'm figuring it out if there's gonna be more dates, but I commend him for
Is this your first date, like from the gym?
this is my first
You know
date in a
what I mean?
while.
No, but I mean like you meeting a guy at the gym.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't
You have
really
to
a gym.
take
It was
that
a
into consideration.
dance class.
Oh, I
But
see.
yeah.
Okay. All right.
But yeah. First time I
Okay. Hey,
really
good for you. That's really
I don't think
wonderful.
the guys really just have the guts to go up to girls and just
It's really
say hi
wonderful,
anymore.
especially since people talk about that and wanting that sort of thing.
Yep.
Totally get it. I
Yeah.
totally get it. It's really a great idea. It's also, as you think about it, it is a good pickup line. Saw the way you walked, and you carried yourself with great confidence. I think that's a great. I just had to come up to you and say hi. Yeah, great.
Yeah. He didn't comment on how I looked
Nope.
or,
Nope.
Good.
Yep. Nicely done. Gotta give him credit.
How about you?
getting back on the dating apps is nice. I've been out on some dates. I'm noticing on the apps, I'm a little bit more sensitive to this. I've talked about before kind of the inequality in dating and finances and all that stuff. And the conversation about, splitting checks and whatnot hasn't been easy at times. But one thing that I'm also noticing is that a lot of women put on their profiles things like "make me laugh," and it's just so interesting that they say things like "make me laugh" rather than have a sense of humor.
Hmm.
Right? I would think that like one just sounds so service oriented, and the other one just sounds like something you experience, right, as in a partner.
Maybe they want to be tickled.
Okay,
That's a way to make me laugh
we're
without
getting
having a
there.
sense of
We're
humor.
warming up to it, friends. Just know that was the trigger warning for everyone. There's going to be, just stay tuned after the break because we're going to have a great conversation with Sharon Pope, who's an amazing coach for those going through divorce and life transitions, particularly works with a lot of women. But note that in that conversation, I'm sure somewhere there's going to be another reference to tickling and toes or something like that that we're just going to have to brace ourselves for. And you never know what Leeron's going to bring up in terms of her unorthodox methods when it comes to coaching women through these life transitions as well. But nonetheless, yeah, dating, it's an interesting experience. I don't seem to match with those women either who say things like make me laugh. So, it doesn't
Yeah.
work for me.
I'd be
I'm not
like,
a clown.
no, you'd be
I'm
like,
not
I
there
don't,
to amuse
no,
you.
you're more like, tell you the real deal.
Oh yeah, that actually is more of my problem.
Yeah.
That I'm like
You
I'm
want to hear
telling
the
them the
real truth?
real deal all too often,
You want to hear the real truth? It's probably not going to make you laugh.
and then I sprinkle in stories about how my dog died because I'm just totally uplifting.
Yeah. You need someone uplifting. You need to be with a woman who is uplifting because two downers does not sound fun to be around.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Good to
Enough.
know. We did the dating check-in as per our outline suggests. Let's I'm really excited. Sharon Pope's going to be a great guest for us to have because we talked about the idea of what it really means to think carefully about should you divorce or should you not. And Sharon works with people specifically for that. And did you encounter Sharon in your, practices going through divorce? Did you see any of her material along the way?
Yes, I have. I mean, I know she has a book,
Right.
new book.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's, we've had definitely conversations a lot about why people get divorced and how people get divorced. And we've had the, attorneys but we're definitely, I love as divorce coaches hearing about how not to get divorced, how to stay married and decide if you should or not. So with that, I am ready to take us to commercial break. We'll see you after the break. The law offices of Alexis M. Langer provide estate planning services, helping California families, business owners, and individuals build a plan that protects them today and preserves their legacy for generations to come. For more information, visit www.alexislangerlaw.com.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm really excited to welcome our guest, Sharon Pope, to the Jewish Divorce Project. Sharon, welcome in. Welcome. Come join us in this raucous conversation already. We're so happy to have you. You are a wonderful person to have. We can already just tell by your wonderful smile that you're bringing to this conversation already that you have a sense of humor, which is a great quality, I think, rather than making people make you laugh or demanding that people make you laugh. But that you're an amazing life coach, as I'd like to share with people now in your bio. Sharon Pope is a certified master life coach and relationship expert, helping women and men get the tools they need to improve, heal, and release their struggling marriages. She's a 7-time international best-selling author on love and relationships, including Stay or Go, how to find the confidence and clarity you need to either fix the struggles in your marriage and move forward without regret, which has sold more than 300,000 copies, and a host of the podcast, The Loving Truth. Her work has appeared in numerous media outlets and online publications, including the Modern Love column on the New York Times, which is a fantastic column. Welcome, Sharon. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's wonderful to have you here on the Jewish Divorce Project.
Thank you so much for having me. I will tell you, I was a little nervous when I saw that you were a rabbi
Oh,
because
well,
I was like, oh, a rabbi.
eh, eh.
And I remember one of my Jewish clients, she used to call me her rabbi. And when she would say that, I would always get a little bit freaked out. I was like, what are you, don't call me. No, I'm not that. And she said, calm down. It just means teacher. I'm like, okay.
Well, but you were right. I think you're both right in that way. Like you were right to take it seriously because it does mean teacher, but like being someone's rabbi, my Leeron knows over here. If you assign that for yourself, by the way, that's like a Jewish values to find someone who you assign as your teacher. So she was like fulfilling a Jewish value in that way. So you should feel esteemed in that way. Right?
I was,
There's
but
no joke.
I
Even
was,
if I am irreverent about it, you should be esteemed in that way because it really is a wonderful title that someone's given you because teacher really means something
Yeah.
to us in the Jewish tradition.
Well, I'll tell you, Sharon, when he asked me to be on his podcast, I was like, okay, listen, you're a rabbi. This is the Jewish Divorce Project. I might say something. I might test you a little bit. I'm not as
That's the
observant.
point
And
of
he was
having you
like, that's
here.
great. So I was a
That's
little
the
nervous at
point.
first too, but
Well, but
he's one of the cool rabbis.
it's
all
great to
good.
have a pope as a rabbi, so it's wonderful. It really is. It really is.
circle. Yeah.
So, welcome to the show, Sharon. I got to say, I really like the way that you convey the type of coaching that you're offering people. Right, as a coach, Leeron and I often talk about we're not pro-divorce. You're not pro-divorce, but you are pro-clarity in the decisions that you make. And if that does involve separation and divorce and ending your marriage, then so be it. But
Mhm.
I think that's really beautiful about your approach is that it really is about knowing yourself and knowing what you want and being clear on that, lest you make maybe a very regrettable mistake. And I'm kind of curious to know how you got to that philosophy and approach in coaching. And I'm wondering if it has to do maybe with a personal story at all, or if it doesn't. But I'm just kind of curious how you got there.
Well, the reason I do this work is because of my personal story of I wish I would have had someone like me
Sure.
when I was in my first marriage and struggling with the decision and I had lots of ideas about, what was right and what was wrong and good and bad and all of that sort of stuff that I was trying to wade my way through without any help and assistance. But I think that honestly, the the place where I got to the stay or go decision, because I really do. I feel like, you know, not every marriage should be saved, but I also feel like there's a lot of marriages that end far too soon because we were never really equipped to be successful.
Right.
I feel like you're going to be a successful accountant. You're going to represent me if the IRS calls me. You better have some tools, some
Yeah.
training, some experience and practice.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you want to do in this world. You're going to need that. But we come into marriage with love, hope, a prayer,
Right.
what we
Yep.
saw at home growing
Faith.
up.
Right.
And then we wonder why we're struggling so much.
Wow. Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's the same with parenting, right? You're like, do I get a manual when my baby's born? I mean, there's so many classes and parenting classes and, there aren't that many marriage classes
Yeah.
unless you
So-
go to counseling. And then people feel like if you're in marriage counseling, there's something wrong with our marriage. But just to
Right.
learn how to be married, who knows
Right.
what they're doing?
I think it would be really wonderful. Like I have an Alexa Dot, an Alexa Echo
Yeah.
in my home, and I have to actively sometimes like turn off the microphone because I'm just paranoid that someone's listening that I don't want to be listening about any number of things. But like I
Mhm.
wonder if someone's already developed like an AI algorithm that's listening to the undertones of the conversations and what's going on in our homes. And then like at random will say like, dude, you need to buy her flowers.
Yeah, can you
It's
imagine
like
if
no,
Alexa?
like I didn't put that in there, but like for some reason my phone is telling me to buy my wife flowers.
That would be
And
amazing.
why is it also telling me that I was a dick last night when I didn't like she asked me an important question, I was just scrolling on my phone.
Can you imagine if Alexa was like,
Millions right
please
there. I'm
change your
trademarking
tone.
that right now. The three of us.
You need to trademark that.
The three of us
That
right
needs
now.
to happen.
We're having this. Right?
I love
it.
The therapist, marriage therapist in the home.
Dr.
It
Alexa.
just says, do you realize what you said last night? You also
They'll be
realize
like, pump the brakes there, dude. You're gonna want to back that up a little bit
But
because
it
you're gonna
turns out, like-
support-
It'll be like setting
Right.
timer for discussion regarding your tone last night.
Well, and you know how it takes women, it literally, there's science that'll say that it takes women 24 hours to get in the mood.
Sure.
So like if you're
Sure.
fighting
Sure.
or you're being a dick,
There you
then
go.
all right, clock
The
is
timer
resetting.
resets. And it does the like 365 days without a fight thing. And then it knocks it
Right.
off. You're like starting all the way over from the beginning.
Awesome.
Why is my phone sending me a timer update for spending 10 minutes to look at myself in the mirror? What? What did I say last night? Ugh. Okay. Yeah. Or if it sees something coming up on your schedule, it anticipates that you're going to need another conversation. Oh, I see you're going out drinking with the buddies tonight. You're going to need to talk about that in therapy later.
Good one.
Let me call your therapist now. All right, enough. I've taken this joke a little too far. Uh, Wonderful. So, Sharon, I would, yeah, why don't we get into that really important topic that you talked about? Why women leave the marriage mentally.
Yeah, I personally have experienced this, and I then when I was doing my coaching, I was like, "Oh, this is kind of statistically known that women might take about 4 years of thinking about the marriage." I mean, I know in my case, it was more like anytime I was unhappy and I was doing the work, we were going to therapy, we were actively trying. So I think women might have that hope of like, let's see if it can get better. But for me, it was anytime I would think about anything that had to do with like uh, the logistics, I would start to think about where are we going to live? How am I going to take care of the kids? But all of those thoughts, what if there's another woman? All of those thoughts were so overwhelming that I would just say, never mind, I'll just stay. And I kind of did that over and over and over until that one last time that was just enough. But
Mhm.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on that because you hit on that it's definitely you say that women leave mentally years before they leave physically.
Yeah, we'll take years to figure it out. I have clients who have been in that position for more than a decade. And it's kind of like
A
what you're
waste.
talking about, where you start to question the marriage. And then when you start to think about, wait a minute, that means I end it. And then you start thinking through all that that would mean.
Mm.
And all of your fears come right to the surface there, whether it's, you know, telling the kids that mom and dad are no longer in love. Where am I going to live? What are the lifestyle changes that are going to need to take place? How are we going to tell our families? Oh my God, dating again, getting
Mm.
naked in front of someone new
Oh my
again,
gosh.
like all of that. Like there's a ton of fears. And so then what do? Both options sort of paralyze you
Mm.
of trying again or making it feel better. Well, I'm doing what I know how to do, and that doesn't seem to be working. So that feels like a dead end. And if I go this path of ending it, that feels terrifying. So I think I'll just stay here in
Mm.
this comfortably uncomfortable zone for years. And I feel like we become so familiar with that place that we know how to wake up in that day in and day out. And so we can stay there for a long time because then we never really have to take any scary action in any new direction.
Yeah, it's not until you're actually out and realizing, wait a minute, I can do this, or
Mhm.
going on that first date or having that first intimate, that you're like, why did I stay as long as I
Sure.
did? I could have done this sooner.
Well, and I think about how exhausting that is just to kind of constantly accommodate those competing thoughts about things like wanting to go but needing to stay, right?
Yep.
And maybe one foot in and one foot out, and just how much energy that takes.
How awful for the spouse that
Yeah.
has no idea maybe that this is what's going on through her head.
Mhm.
Like,
And I have to
It's
say,
and
by
then
the
they
way,
feel like the rug is pulled out from underneath them, and the women are like, "What are you talking about? This has been going on forever."
right. And I have to say, Sharon, I appreciate the fact as a a husband and one of these guys whose wife divorced him, right? That you don't come at it as a way of saying like this is only a matter of saving your life or charting a new course, right? You acknowledge the fact that like these are good guys, right? Some of these guys are good guys, even if their wives ask him for divorce. It doesn't mean that there's anything defective about them,
Oh gosh, no.
right?
And actually, I think, what, and maybe we'll get to some of this, but this is one of the areas where I love to teach on the differences between men and women.
Sure.
But one of the areas that where it really shows up is that men communicate very directly and women communicate in nuances and subtleties.
Right.
And so we say things like, I'm not happy.
Mm.
And then, which is sort of like, here is my happiness, husband, do something good with it.
Right.
You're supposed to know. It's sort of like that. Make me laugh,
Right.
make me happy, do something.
Right.
And they don't know what to do. Most people don't barely know how to make themselves happy, much less know how to make you happy. And so we don't have those direct conversations oftentimes as women to say, look, I'm getting to a place of where I don't know if we're going to be able to recover. And this scares me. And I want to talk to you about this because if we're going to turn this around, we need to deal with this now. Now is the time to do this. And we don't have those direct conversations, but all the while over these, call it 4 years, we're getting more and more comfortable with leaving. I call it that continuum. I'm moving further along that continuum. And by the time I get to a place of where, and I'm all done here, that's when we communicate that to our spouse. And frankly, I think our spouses deserve to know. They are half of this equation. I always say if my husband had one foot out the door, I would want to know. And frankly, I think I deserve to know.
Do you think it
Yeah.
has anything to do, like, is there a correlation with the age of the children too, maybe? That like the older the kids get, the easier it gets to also say, because maybe the kids are more capable of handling it, right? There's less, if the reality is, right, if your kids were young, right, and you divorced, as the mom, you'd probably be worried even more because you know that much more of the emotional weight, right, and the burden of taking care of them would still fall on your shoulders.
My son was 3 and we were in the midst, like he had just he just finished potty training, and it was so hard knowing that I had to send him, and but, uh, but then my 7-year-old had to struggle emotionally in a different way, so, but yeah, I think any younger than 3 when he was like a baby would have been even harder, but
Right.
yeah, that was really
It's
hard
got to be part
to,
of the emotional math and thinking about, can I really divorce? Is it practical to really divorce now because the kids are so young? And if they're older, maybe a couple years older, I don't know. It's an
I mean,
assumption.
I will say it like this. It almost doesn't matter because we're going to we're going to make up the reasons why, and kids are always
Sure.
a
Okay. Fair
first
enough.
place you go to.
Doesn't really
And so
matter. Yeah.
I have plenty of people who are like, but my kids are young. I can't do it when they're young. And then I have plenty of people who are like, but my kids are older. And how are they going to deal with this? They're in high school. They're just starting to learn about love. This is going to taint them forever. It almost doesn't matter. And I even have clients who their kids are in their 30s.
Mm.
And this is what's interesting about that. Oh, I'll just wait till they're 18 conversation. Because we think, like, what is the logic here is that maybe once they turn 18, that they're going to shut off all ability to have feelings and emotions about their parents divorcing.
Mm.
They'll be in their 30s and 40s and they will have opinions and feelings.
Fair point. Fair point. Okay. Yeah.
but so I mean we're talking specifically about women, and I do feel, and I might be wrong, but from what I've kind of seen and gathered and a lot of the clients I've talked to, it seems like men won't necessarily leave a marriage just because they're unhappy. Like I think that men maybe are more tolerant, or I feel like women will leave a marriage because they don't want to be in that marriage and they are unhappy, and it's not and they just want to be alone. I feel like
Mm.
men will end up leaving very often for another woman,
Yeah.
Okay. Why do you look at me in that way?
because I'm waiting for you to attack me with
Like,
with a
will
response.
men, well, do men just end up leaving a marriage? Oh, I mean, that's
I
a good
think
point.
I don't know. What do you think about that, Sharon?
I defer to Sharon. Yeah. Yeah.
He's going to punt. I think that in our hierarchy of what constitutes happiness in our lives, I think for women, relationships are at the top of that hierarchy. That relationships are the end all be all. Like it's really, really important. The quality and health of our relationships dictates the quality and health of how we feel about our lives. Men, not, and this is a generalization, so this is not every man, but many times relationships are not quite that marker of what constitutes a successful, happy life for me. Right? It's
I
career and success and
So
maybe not
interesting.
success, but fulfillment and purpose.
Oh, that's so interesting. And for women, it's not even just romantic relationships, with
No,
friendships, all
right.
oh,
relationships.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
huge.
I,
we're built for
I
relationships.
Yeah.
I couldn't. Yeah, I completely agree. I really do. I think that's a yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're very compassionate
Yeah.
and you're sensitive. You have all those qualities, and and you agree with that.
I think men's success comes from their operations alone, because it breeds a better community of them ultimately amongst other men, right? They're a community of lone wolves, or they're a pack of lone wolves who will operate together. And God help you if you're an alpha that can get along with other alphas, right? Or it's kill or be killed. And I
Mhm.
think you see that play out in a number of different scenarios, from the playground all the way up to the boardroom and the office. And I think women's success, as per what Sharon's saying, comes from much more of a communal relationship based approach, right? Which is to say that they rely on their friends and their relationships with one another. They build relationships within the office probably far more easily and whatever understanding. I mean, when I taught, it's more of a school is much more driven by women. That's just the way the demographics work out. And to see the way, being in an office building, so to speak, right? A schoolhouse is very different than even a synagogue, but in a schoolhouse or wherever that is dominated, right, by female leadership and female authority and female relationships in that way, even in a hierarchical structure, felt much more community oriented, and like everyone is involved in it the individual success because it meant betterment for the whole community. And so that's what I mean. Like, I think the success that women gain is through their relationships with one another that helps support the individual, which ultimately, betters the community. Whereas guys, it's you're on your own, brother, right? Like, you got to help everyone else out and you'll benefit from it some way, but like, you're on their own to do it. So I don't
Yeah.
know. That was a long way of agreeing with you, but yeah.
No, I think it's huge. And this is also why uh, it's been shown that women do better after divorce than men do
Right.
because we have
The
community.
relationships.
Yeah, because men don't necessarily have the same level of community that women innately build around themselves
And I think
because they are
that's
alone.
And I think that's also why you find a lot more men almost immediately after divorce finding themselves in long-term relationships in which they may involve the kids too early in because they're searching for the comfort themselves. Maybe they also don't know how to necessarily parent their kid as well as they thought. And so having a woman involved in some way will help, even if they won't outwardly state it.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of what men do in response to divorce is get into the wrong relationships more quickly.
Just to move on,
Oh, sure.
just to be in relationship because they do better in relationships
That's
where
exactly right.
women can do well
Because
in
they have the
relationships or
community outside of it.
Mhm.
So what are the major main points of how you help people when they're in that stage of trying to decide? I mean, I have some clients that are like talking to me about their husbands, and I'm sitting here going, "He doesn't sound that bad."
It's all relative. It
You
all just depends.
know, like yeah. So where do you say?
Yeah.
Because I know you do a lot of work to try to help people understand if their marriage is past saving. What is kind of a good threshold for that?
Mm.
What's a good threshold for if a marriage is past saving?
I know it's a lot
How do you know
is
when
how
it's
do you
time,
know? Like, how
right?
do you what
Like
are the steps you take?
even if you've gotten to that point personally, I think Leron's question is, and I don't mean to mansplain. That's
No.
not what I'm trying. But like, it's how do you know when you're ready? Like, you're ready is one thing. How do you know when the marriage is done?
Yeah. So my process that I use is that to get to real clarity, you have to genuinely try. And what I mean by that is because we didn't come into this with a whole host of tools and relationship, like how to argue productively and how to set healthy boundaries and how to communicate more directly and how to initiate sex and what to do when it gets boring and what if there's no longer desire and what do you do when there's an affair and how do you rebuild trust? All of this kind of stuff. Like we didn't come into this with anything. So what I always say is like, look, just recognize that like you weren't set up to be successful, but all these things are learnable. And so if you want to see if your marriage can evolve, so this is going to take a bit of an explanation, but the marriage you have today, if you're struggling to the point where you've got one foot out the door, this is not actually the marriage that you want. You might want a relationship with this person, but it's not the way it's functioning today. So we've got to see, can we evolve the relationship to something that feels good for both of you today? Which means you got to get clear about what you want. You got to show up for that. And then you got to see if you can create that shift in your marriage. So you've really got to show up, get equipped with tools and try. And what I mean by try is try these tools over and over and over again. It's going to take some practice because just like learning Italian, the first time you open your mouth, it's not going to sound like Italian. So you're going to have to practice it a little bit. And then if you genuinely give it that opportunity, and everyone has different time frames, because some people are like, I've been trying for 10 years. I'm only going to try for 10 more minutes.
Mm.
And other people are like, I really would like for this to be able to work out. I do have love for my husband, but I don't know how to find my way back to him. They're willing to take a year or longer to really see, can we evolve this to something that feels good? But if it can't shift, if this relationship is what it is, you've gotten equipped, you've tried your best, and it just will not budge and it won't feel good for you, then you can make peace with a decision to end that relationship. It still won't be easy, but you can make peace with that decision and you won't look back and regret it. You will never regret giving something your very best shot.
So great it's so important for the couple to have their own tools, because a lot of times it's like, oh yeah, we went to counseling, we went to couples therapy, so you feel like you tried, but not every therapist necessarily is the right one for you, and not everybody gives you the right tools, and not, you know what I mean? Like it's only one piece, I think.
And it's so different because I'll tell you, like, I don't love working with couples. I work with individuals. And even when I work with a couple, I work with them as individuals. I meet with them separately because I think we can get at the heart of it so much quicker because they're so much more honest than when your partner's sitting right there. You know,
Oh yeah.
we'll say things differently when your partner is 3 inches away from you.
You have to create that sacred space for that person to find the peace to be vulnerable, right? So that they can actually share all those things that they haven't been willing to share with their, potential ex or their current partner, to get them to the place of having the honest conversation.
I agree.
I do think a great way to get to all of those tools and learn good communication
Uh-oh.
is the second time around. I hate to say it, but like listening to everything. Well, no, she's talking about if you can have communication, if you could do this, if you could do that. I'm like, man, I learned so much. I'm going to do it so much better second time around.
That's
It's like the first marriage is like your training.
But that's what you're supposed to be using your relationships now for. Right? Is to practice those forms of communication that you didn't use, earlier, those boundary settings that you didn't do, right? All that stuff. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I would think.
Yeah. I mean, so if the stats are that first marriages end in divorce 40 to 50% of the time, second marriages are 68% of the time, and third marriages are 74% of the time. And I think the reason for that is because most people aren't doing what you're talking about doing. Like when I got out of my first marriage, went through my divorce, I just like went head first because I wasn't a coach then. I was in marketing then. So I didn't have any tools either. I just dove in deep into personal growth and relationship tools. And it was like all I really wanted to do in my free time. It was so interesting to me because I couldn't figure out why I couldn't make this work with this perfectly good, kind-hearted human being. So I just felt like if we can figure this out and move this along further, then there might be a path forward. So I lost my way there, but
no, but I think you're right that it has to take a willingness to say, even if I think even if someone has waited it out before they've taken the time to really express that they want a divorce, it doesn't mean that they are entirely without need to do their own inner work themselves, right?
Yes, that's what I was going. Thank you. Because I did my own inner work. So my second marriage is nothing like my first marriage, but that's because I'm different.
There you go.
So that's the issue is that a lot of people are like, oh, well, I'm going to speak from the woman's perspective.
Please.
But like, they're the problem.
Please speak from your natural perspective. Go right ahead. I give you permission on my show.
Here's the problem.
Thank you. Sorry.
Here's the problem. If I get rid of him, problem solved. The problem is, really, we take ourselves with us because it always takes two. And so I knew that from early on going, there must be some reason why I can't make it work because he's a solid human being. And so I was willing to look at myself. I wanted that because I felt like if I can improve myself, then I can create a different experience going forward. But if you're always in the blame mode and you're like, he's the problem, get rid of him, problem solved. Well, my friend, you are going to recreate the same experience and you're going to be part of that statistic of the second marriage and third marriage.
I think it's really easy for women, to say if a woman, for instance, was cheated on, okay, if her husband had an affair, it's harder to look at yourself because they're the victim and they're like, he cheated on me. But it's like, why did he go outside the marriage? What, can you realize that there's maybe something that wasn't great about it? Like I think that's a lot of work that women need to really dig deep into.
I
I
have
mean,
a
it sounds
lot
bad to
of,
say like, why? Well, he cheated on me because I did something wrong. You don't want to go there, but there's clearly
Well,
the
but I think Esther Perel's point is that like an affair is more of a reflection on the marriage than it is of the partner, and so that there's something to be learned from it. And I think she talks about people not being able to mate in captivity, right, and how marriage really kind of does modern American marriage really does kind of impact that by constricting people more so than setting them free, as it should, right? You should have a partner who says, "I want you to live up to your greatest potential," right, and I'm in full support of that. Right, that's what real freedom is, right? Is being able to do that without any type of constraints, but also having people like have your back in the process, right? The wind beneath your wings, lifting you up. But like marriages that don't do that become really unhealthy places fast, even if they're not meant to be, right? Like there's the real extreme kind that are abusive, and then there are kinds that are not. And I forget where we were going with this. I don't even remember. I'm sorry now. But maybe for women it's constricting. Men don't realize that. I'm trying to bring it back. I
well,
don't
no,
know
we were talking
what I
about
get for trying to sound smart.
we were talking about having affairs, about affairs, and how it being.
Right, right,
Sharon, you bring us
right.
back.
Thank you, dear God. I'm
I got you.
terrible.
I got you.
Daylight savings. I blame daylight savings. Thank you.
So I deal with a lot of people who have affairs.
Right.
And while definitely one generation ago, it was primarily a conversation of the woman being cheated on. It's not the case anymore. Like the statistics of men are around 50 to 60%
Mm.
of men having affairs in a marriage, but women, that stayed steady. Women are now somewhere between 40 and 50% of women are having affairs.
Right.
And so it's become much more common than you would predict. And anytime you're sitting back in that victim mode of I was wronged, and you were, um, it's never going to feel empowering. And it's always going to feel a little bit graspy, like choose me, please choose me. And once there's an affair, nobody wants
Nobody
to
wants
talk
that.
about the other stuff, like what made the relationship vulnerable to an affair to begin with.
Mm.
But that's what's, you really got to get at that, because if you don't solve that, we're just going to be right back here in the exact same spot a few years from now. Every time we disconnect, I'm going to go looking for someone else to help me distract so that I don't have to actually face the challenges in my relationship.
That was the point I distracted myself from earlier, which is to say that just got distracted again.
Sorry,
But
that was my fault.
no. But like, there's actual. If you want to live past an affair in your marriage, I have to imagine that you have to do some really serious, shitty work in order to get there. There's a lot of honesty that needs to go into it, and if you don't have the energy for that, right? If you already had one foot out in one way, you're just probably going to opt for the other foot to go out, right? Rather than dig both heels into the marriage and try to make it work. I'm just thinking from like an exhaustion standpoint.
Mhm.
Like who would wants to do that? I'm actually curious from your standpoint. I have other questions that I want to ask, but like, how many people are faced with, yeah, I want to do the hard work to really invest in my marriage, right? Which may be unsavable, but I really want to try. Or, you know what? It's really easier just to cut and run right now. And my
Divorce
husband's a
is kind
nice
of popular right
my
now and
my husband-
trendy.
my husband's a nice guy. My kids are going to be okay, as everyone says, right? As long as we can focus on the right things, and it's going to be much easier to do the type of self growth and personal work I need to do in divorce than it would be in marriage.
Mm. So probably those people don't find me,
Sure,
right? Because they're
right?
like, oh, it'll be fine. I'll just leave and I'll
Gotcha,
just go create plan B with this other person.
gotcha.
It's really when they're torn, and the affair has now complicated things so much more, because now they can't get out of their head between comparing option A and option B, option A, option B. And now they're comparing two things that in my mind are completely incomparable, because you're comparing what you think your life will be like with this new person that you've been with, that you haven't actually lived life with. You haven't lived life alongside them, right? You've met in a hotel and you see them once a week and you send flirty messages all day long, and you're able to show up differently to that relationship than as the wife and mother or husband and father role that we've gotten into inside of our relationships, that we find a hard time breaking out of in terms of being in our woman role or our man role. So yeah, I think probably the people who are just cut and run they don't want to do that work, they probably don't find their way to me. But when there's that extra complication on top of it, of like, now my heart is in two places, and can I be so selfish as to end the relationship for my own happiness? Because I think that that will make me happier. But every single person who's had an affair, who's thinking of leaving their marriage to go pursue that affair, has Googled what percentage of relationships that start as affairs actually work out. And
Sure.
it's like 10%. It's
Right.
not great.
Right.
The odds are not in your favor.
Right. Right. It's a lot of work, and I imagine it requires a lot of reflecting, and in that process, I imagine there's an exploration of the language we use and how we communicate to one another. And so I'm curious, with the clients that you end up working with, you often point out maybe words that are damaging to their relationships, right? You I think can focus on the 5 words that are destroying or killing your marriages, and so I'm curious what those are. I'm wondering if maybe we need to have like a new segment on the show every time we meet, which is like the words that are killing your relationships, just to make people aware and dramatize it a little bit. But Sharon, please, what are these words?
What are some words that
Yeah,
are, the 5 words?
the five
Oh,
words.
I know it. Till death do us part.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Ooh, that's powerful. I didn't think it was going to be that. I thought it was going to be like, you're a bitch.
No,
And that was going to be 4.
Really?
no, because we put those in our vows because we're so afraid of the freedom that exists inside of our
Ooh,
relationships. Because so we want to lock it down. We want to say we are going to remain together no matter how miserable we make one another till death. But then we put our marriage on a shelf, we stop investing in it, we stop showing up for it, and we pour all of our time, love, attention, and energy into family, work, whatever. And those things are thriving. But then we're shocked when the marriage is suffering.
My ex tried to definitely pull up like, but we made vows.
I'm sorry
We
to
have a
laugh at that.
ketubah. Like, and we signed a ketubah. I'm like, what? I'm locked in? Like, I'm fine. Breach of contract. Like, what am I
Breach of
doing?
contract.
Right, yeah, sure.
Like,
Hey, whatever you say, buddy. I don't mean to
No,
laugh
it
at it,
happens
but
all the
yeah,
time.
I
Like
laughed
you made a
too.
vow, you made a promise.
sorry. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's good.
Right. Well, it makes me wonder, like, do we subconsciously think, like, all right, get married and get that out of the way because then you'll have some type of relational safety net. Like, you won't have
Yep.
to worry about going out there and dating, and you'll take care of that drive to procreate, whether you actually know you can handle that or not,
Well, I
right?
think,
You're going to take
yeah.
care of that, and in the meantime, it'll free up that emotional space some way and that physical time to like focus on your career and the other
Yeah.
things. But we don't actually think about how it really impacts us with the things like till death do us part and how constricting that really is.
Well,
Right.
I think people who get married a little bit later, I'm curious about that, if there's a better success rate, because I feel like I mean, I was 25
Mm.
when I met my ex and I thought I knew who I was. I mean, how much do you really know who you are at that age? It takes going through marriage and having children and a mortgage and all of those things. And I think that's how you really learn who you are a little more so. But I think that, yeah, that what you want when you're young and it's your first time getting married and you're thinking about a family and you're thinking about everything, it's different. Like I have friends now that are in their 40s in their first series, they're getting married for the first time, and that's a totally different. They're going into this with such a different mentality.
My buddy just called me. This is a buddy from high school, like one of my best friends from high school, and he's got divorced shortly before I did, maybe a couple of years before I did. And recently just told me that the woman he was dating for 5 years, that relationship just ended for any number of different reasons. And it ended kind of in the typical way that a lot of marriages end, right? There's this like kind of slow departure from one another. In the process of talking to him about it, he said that this was his first real relationship post divorce.
Hmm.
And I was like, listen, man, like some of those relationships aren't really supposed to work out. I know it feels bad right now, like you feel a sense of despair. He was literally talking about that, like if he was really going to find another relationship. I was like, you will, they're out there, but like you have to give this process time as you do in all circumstances, but even more so, like now's really the time to learn from it and what do you want in the next
And be
relationship.
single for a little bit.
That's exactly right. Like 5 years is a long time immediately post divorce to be in a relationship. And like we just talked about, right? The first thing he did, right? Maybe not the first thing he did, but like certainly that's a long time. And not that I wouldn't advocate for going the distance in a relationship if you couldn't, but like it sounds like it just wasn't working out, and he brought a lot of the same stuff from his previous marriage into that one.
Mm, yeah. I feel like you're probably right that the older you get, the more you know thyself. And so hopefully the better success you'll have with that. But I also know, like, let's say I know I was 27 and when I got married in my first marriage. But let's say you get married at 35. Trying to know who you're going to be in your 50s, post menopause, post empty nester, like you don't actually know. So,
Yeah.
because life is going to change you, right? Like try becoming the woman or the man who you were before
Right.
you ever had kids. Go ahead.
Right.
Like you can't. So life is going to change you. And that's part of this is, are we going to grow together or are we going to assume that how we are today is how we're going to be forever? And if we don't start getting more comfortable with that we're changing and our partner's going to change, and I can't wait to meet who they're going to be next. I can't wait to see who they're going to be next. If we would normalize that change, it wouldn't be so jarring when our partner starts growing and we get a little insecure about that. We could explore that a little bit more as opposed to getting freaked out by it.
Okay, I'm loving this conversation entirely. We've got to have you back at some other point, but I want to just challenge you a little bit on that last part because to be that open to your partner growing, right, and self-discovery and being able to tolerate all that stuff has got to take a great, just a great amount of maturity, right, in
Mm,
oneself, and to be able to do that. Like, how do you get
yeah.
to that point then of being so mature for your partner to allow for that type of space?
So there was a meme I saw years ago, and I have tried to find it. I'm trying to find who the author is, but it was essentially, it was like, I can't find it, but this was the theme of it. It was a boy, like a young adult boy asking his grandfather,
Hmm.
who had been married for more than 60 years, what's the secret to a happy marriage, granddad? And his grandfather said, your grandma has been at least 8 different women in the time that I've been married to her. And I just have looked forward to getting to know each and every one of them. And that was the thing that made me go, yeah, if we would just go into it like that,
Hmm.
like just being more curious about who our partner is and who
Hmm.
they're becoming and what's interesting to them now versus what was interesting to them before. If we would just approach our marriage with a little bit more curiosity,
Hmm.
I feel like so many couples, it's like after you've been married 10 years, you feel like, oh, I know everything there is to know about
Hmm.
this person. So I stop asking questions and I stop being curious about them. So I think it can start with just simple curiosity.
So amazing. I mean, I remember I literally remember my ex at one point being like, "What happened? You're not the woman I married."
No
That's the way
shit.
it should be.
And me feeling bad about it. Like,
Right,
"No,
right,
I'm
right,
not the woman you
right. And
married."
you shouldn't feel bad
My
about it
biggest
at all.
concern at that point was where I was having where I was going for happy hour and how many times I could do Pilates in the week. Like, I mean,
So true.
No, there should be these institutions for setting each other free in that way. There really should be, right? Not constricting like till death do us part, right? And there's nowhere you can go, and you just kind of have to suck it up and deal with it. But it should be that, it becomes an opportunity to say like, okay, now I can really be vulnerable enough to grow into who I want to be, rather than defensive about it.
instead of being like, "Oh, I'm not the woman I used to
Right,
you're
and
not the
that's a
woman I
bad
used to
thing.
be," it's more like, "Who is this new woman? Let's get to know her."
Let's celebrate it.
Right.
Yeah, what a
Right,
shift.
right. And
It
equally
was
for
his
men
I
too, in
wanna
instinct.
tell
that way.
all of my married friends to be
Right.
like, "Who are we now? Let's look at each
And
other."
and I would say equally for two men in that way,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yes. I mean,
Wow.
I love that approach because I feel like the idea of like shaming, like, because that what your husband said to you stemmed from his insecurity of I don't like this answer. You've changed the rules. I didn't change. And so sometimes we use shame to as a way to sort of control people
Agreed.
when I'm like, no shit, you're not the same person you were when you were 25.
Well, the word change should be swapped out for growth.
Growth,
You've
yeah, but
grown.
yeah,
I haven't
exactly.
grown.
I think
Really
there's
is what it is at the
and
end of the
it
day.
also sounds like there's some fear there, right? Of
Sure.
I don't know who this person is. I thought there was something familiar about what's going on, right? What do I need to do if I'm thinking right about it? It's what do I need to do to catch up, right? Or how can I meet her in some way, and what can I learn from it? And is there growth that I can go through that's also beautiful? But I'm willing to bet like it takes a lot to get there too, and like ultimately a lot of guys are just like, this doesn't feel right. How do I get it back to normal again to what it does feel right, and
Mhm.
just move on with everything being copacetic,
Right. And if you, it would just be so much easier if you would just go back to being the woman who was fine with fine. Could
right?
you just do that
Right,
for me, please?
right,
Just be
right.
fine with our perfectly fine marriage.
Well, you also don't necessarily know. I feel like when you're, I don't know if it's age or just, experience, life experience, you don't really know what it is that you need from a partner necessarily. You don't know. You think like, "Oh, he makes me laugh and we have good times together." You don't know that necessarily maybe ambition in a man is really important, or, there's certain qualities that you don't really know you need from a partner until they're there or there.
Well, and then because you're growing, that means your needs are changing.
Yeah.
And so the things that worked really well together for the two of you, you fit together like puzzle pieces, for the first 20 years. What if now you're not as good of a fit anymore?
Right.
What if, I've had clients where the man that they're married to he's the one that changed. Like he went through something, maybe it was an addiction and came out of that addiction, or maybe it was he lost his job, fell into depression, now has anxiety and depression and all of that. And she's trying to find her way back to that guy, but she's still the vivacious, outgoing one who wants to go do things. And he's more like feeling unsafe and has a lot of fear and now doesn't want to do a lot of things and doesn't want to go out and doesn't want to be social. So life has changed him. And so now where we used to be a good fit, now we're not a good fit anymore. And what do we do with that?
And do you keep on going as non-fit, or do you find ways to complement each other in other ways, I guess? Is that
Yes. Yes. You see if can we complement each other in other ways? Um, I have funny stories about my husband, my
right?
second husband.
Right.
When I say my current husband, it sounds like I'm gonna have many, but
Husband
he's
number two.
yeah, husband number two. He's very, very different than me, but he's super chill. And I'm like, I call it GSD, get shit done woman.
Nice.
I'm like, oh, I know how to operate from that place. And he likes to go fishing, and I'm not really someone who fishes. But he brings a calmness to me that frankly I need and that I can genuinely appreciate. But I didn't know what to do with it at first. So you have to go looking for how is this difference between us an awesome thing, as
Mhm,
opposed to, well, this is different. You should be more like me. It would be so
mhm.
much easier if you were just a carbon copy of me. So there can be ways to make differences work. You don't have to be carbon copies of each other, but sometimes those differences can't be bridged.
Really,
And so we just,
You have to appreciate each other's differences. I think about my parents, they're so different. My parents are married for 45, 44 years. They're still so in love. And I've grown up seeing a really great, great model. But like my mom is, she does Reiki and she's a healer and she's into, knows all about angels and the spiritual. My dad is like science, real, like they are so different. He appreciates and respects and loves and even will go sometimes to her crazy, hoo-hoo events with her.
yeah.
And I'm definitely a mix of the two. But it's really so sweet to be able to see that even though he never like will roll his eye. He is so supportive of her and how she is, even though he doesn't really buy it.
You don't have to be carbon copies. You
You
just have to
know?
be respectful of your differences. And your dad
Yeah.
respects those differences. And so does your mom. Your mom doesn't sound like she's trying to change him. Like, you need to be more like me or we're not going to be together.
She'll try to say things like, you need to close your eyes and manifest, and he'll just be like, okay, whatever. She tries. Doesn't really work so well, but she knows. They know each other.
sounds like a wonderful, advocacy for differences in relationships help enhance the relationships. But it also sounds like you're saying, Sharon, how about he provides you with a certain amount of calm in your life, right? He
Yes.
enables you to feel calm. And enabling is a real interesting word here. Usually use it right in ways that sound destructive to people, but you talk about enabling. That's really the difference between make me laugh and having a sense of humor. Having a sense of humor enables someone to feel calm and to feel safe and to laugh in that way, but it doesn't make it their job, right? And their responsibility, right? So it's finding those people, who, if not immediately compatible, and that may not be anything that any of us can really actually have, right? But that's someone who is compatible over a long period of time, right? You learn in the relationships about how you can enable one another for that type of growth.
Yes. Yes, 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 for sure. And I'll tell you what, I take more risks in my
Mm,
life and in my business because I know I have that groundedness in my spouse.
there you go.
So, but you just have to go looking for
Right,
what's great about it as opposed to this isn't working.
right, right.
So in the second marriage, instead of till death do us part, what is it?
Oh
Till,
gosh.
until we're
Yes.
done. Like,
There's a
So
I don't know if you are familiar
until the
with
marriage
Byron.
is over. I
the
mean,
therapist kicks us out.
Are you familiar with Byron Katie? Are you familiar with her
Oh
work?
no, maybe
mm-mm.
I should.
Everyone just
No.
calls her Katie.
Uh-huh.
She's a great spiritual teacher that
Sure.
I follow. And she got married and she didn't want to get married, but her husband did. And she said, well, here's what I can come up with. I'm going to love you until I can't. That's what I got. And I was like, okay, like most people can't quite get to that place. Like, I'm going to love you until I don't love you anymore.
Yeah.
But essentially, that's what we're signing up for. Like relationships require risk. And even though we try to say the words like we're going to make a promise and we're going to lock it down, but the nature of marriage is that
Yeah.
there's you and there's your partner, and you create this thing called
Right.
your marriage. And the minute one of you disconnects and stops choosing the other person, now the marriage itself is in trouble.
Mm.
So, and we have free will, and that's not going anywhere. So here we are.
Divorce has always got to be an option in that way, right? Should always be an option in that way to know that people can leave. They have to be reminded of that too.
And then I think if we knew that and we were conscious of it, we would show up very differently to our marriages.
So funny because I always say, like, I mean, divorce was in my mind when I was getting married, not an option, not a thought. It was like, I didn't get married at all thinking. And I remember my aunt who is divorced saying to me at one point, if it doesn't work out, you get a divorce. And I was like, oh, how could you say that? I thought it was like the most horrible thing she could have said. I thought she was jinxing me. I mean, maybe she did.
I think people are aware of the social ostracization that potentially comes with it, and they don't want any part of that, and maybe how awkward it's going to feel, particularly in faith-based communities where marriage and family life is the central anchor to, passing on traditions and things like that, or at least it's perceived to be that way. I don't think it should be, but it is. Right? That's
Yeah.
part of how Judaism is counterculture, saying that rather than being alone, you should be with someone. Right? The purpose of being with someone is I think what we're talking about, right? If marriage is not just a relationship safety net, right? It's an experience meant to enhance you, right? And the quality of your life. And if it's not doing that, then what are you really doing in it? Right?
Yeah. I think that our marriage, our partner is our greatest teacher because they're going to see all the things. They're going to press all the buttons. They're going to be there front row and center for, I don't know, 40, 50 years.
Right. Right.
And you can't live that closely and that intimately with another human being without having those challenges that are going to require your growth. And you'll either step up to that or you'll go, maybe this just isn't what it needs. Maybe this isn't what works for me
Right.
in my life.
Have you worked with couples that are in that, or individuals that are, do you talk to your clients about other ways of being together where it's not just marriage or divorce? Do you find there's other solutions and other ways of people? Do you find there's a trend of people staying living together as roommates but not really being emotionally together, or like I've heard so many different ways right now of.
I mean, living like roommates that's a whole thing. If I had $1 for every time I heard
Mm.
that, it's super common, but I don't think that a lot of people won't do that intentionally. They just say that's how we're living, but I don't like it. It's not what I want. It doesn't mean that they're doing anything about it. It just means we're living like roommates and this kind of sucks.
Well, yeah, and I think I think about like what kind of role model are you, especially if there's children, what kind of role model are you showing your children? But it's actually really surprising. I've realized that my kids in conversation have quite a few friends who are like, "Oh yeah, my parents don't sleep in the same room." Or like
Oh
they're
yeah.
just used to it. It's just it is what it is. Like they don't share a
Mhm.
room. They're not necessarily divorced, but they don't really see their parents interacting in a romantic
Kind of nest in the house.
way. Yeah,
Right.
like kids are used to that. Some kids are used to that
That's
now.
what they're normalizing. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what love and marriage looks like,
Right.
unless you've had some really open conversations with them about that. Now, there are some couples who essentially they sort of mentally divorce, but then they still live together or they nest where like the kids stay in the house and the two parents sort of come and go. Like there's an apartment that they would go to where the kids don't have to leave. Um, or they say, hey, we're going to do this until the kids graduate. And then what I would, if they do that and they're working with me, I would say you have an open, loving conversation with your kids about what this is now and how we're changing the nature of our relationship. But it doesn't mean we're not still a family. Like I have a lot of clients who they've divorced their spouse and they still call themselves a family because you get to define what family is.
Sure.
You get to choose that. And just because the nature of mom and dad's relationship is changing doesn't mean that mom isn't mom and dad isn't dad and that we still can't be a family who cares about one another.
Right.
We can't.
And the kids have to be able to see that too. I mean, my ex and I were recently just talking to our eldest about his grades, right? A teacher reached out and said that he's in danger of getting X grade. Progress reports are coming up, so we needed to talk to him, and we both decided that it was better to do it in person, right, and have that conversation with him and just lay it flat out for him. But that doing it together was really the demonstration that he needed to let him know that regardless of the divorce, we're both still invested in his well-being and his success.
Good.
Yeah, it's so good. That's so good.
Have to rise to the occasion
Good
sometimes.
call on that one.
So I'm curious, Sharon. Let's imagine as we wrap up now. Let's imagine you've got a client and you've been working them through right all these steps to get clear on whether or not they're ready for divorce, and they've got to make a decision. It's reached the time where they can't kick the can down the road anymore. Right? They've gathered enough right information. What's the question you're sending them home with? Right, the day before, the night before they need to make this decision, right? They get to sleep on it. What's the question you're having them sleep on before they give you a final decision
Mm.
and they tell you which way they want to go?
So I use a continuum of like scale of 1 to 10. So we would have been talking about this the whole way along in our work
Sure.
together because it changes every
Yeah.
day. Like, so 1 is I'm in it to win it and I want to do anything I can to make this work. And 10 is we're all done here.
Right.
And so I often tell people like if you're consistently at an 8 or a 9, that has to be enough for you because to get to a 10 of where you never have any doubt in your mind, you're probably just operating from anger. Um, but I think you can feel confident with an 8 or 9. So it would be where I want you. So first of all, the other thing I would have been working with them on is some practice of getting still and quiet so that you can hear your inner wisdom. You can hear that inner voice, that gut instinct that we all have, but you can't hear it when your mind is very noisy or you're asking
Mhm.
all your friends or talking to your sister about it. And you know what I mean? Like you just got to like quiet it all down, get in touch with that part of you, that voice within you, and be able to trust it. So that's some of the other work that we would have been doing.
Mm.
And then I'd say, and wake up tomorrow morning and just ask yourself, where are you at on that scale? 1 through 10 today. And if you're an 8 or a 9, then let's start moving forward. You can always make a new decision in the future should you get new information, right? If you get new information, like your partner has completely changed and now they're ready, like then you can react and respond to that. But if nothing new has changed, then you know what this looks like.
No, I got to say, Sharon, that was a very rabbinic answer. We started off our conversation noting how you are a rabbi to
Rabbi Pope.
people, Rabbi Pope here. Um, but I got to say, from one rabbi to the next, that was exactly the story that Elijah had in his journey, right? When he's on the run, right, he gets in touch with the still silent voice within, right? We often attribute that maybe to the godly voice or the conscience that
Mhm.
we have directing our right? Inner choices and the way we want to create the experiences of our lives, the experiences of our relationships. Right? That's what you're talking about here, right? When everything's swirling around us, the mighty wind that's shattering the rocks and the thunder and the lightning and the fire, right? We have to tap in the chaos around us. We have to take a moment to tap in to the still silent voice, like you said. Beautiful. Thank you,
Timing
Rabbi
with
Pope.
Passover coming up.
Really, I mean, this was a really
good
wonderful
setup.
early Passover episode in that way.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Rabbi Pope.
It was hilarious. And you know what's also so funny is I call myself a recovering Catholic, and
Do you
my
really?
last name is
We'll take
like
them.
it, which is
We'll take
hilarious.
them. We take the recovering the Catholics, and the lapsed Baptists, and if I can get it out, we'll take a whole bunch of other people. But yeah,
That's
it's wonderful. This is
funny.
Sharon. This really was wonderful. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. You're so generous in your wisdom, in your experience, in how you operate with people, in your time, and in your patience. This was really a wonderful conversation for us. Thank you so much.
I loved it. Thank you so much for having me. Really.
Sharon, how can people find you and get your book?
I'm super easy to find. If you type in sharonpope.com, you will find me. If you type in Sharon Pope to Google, you will find me. But if you go to stayergobook.com, you can get that book that they were referencing at the beginning that sold more than 300,000 copies and has helped an awful lot of people.
Amazing.
Thank you so much. SharonPope.com, everyone. Remember to check it out and buy Sharon's book today. It will help and add to your life. Thank you so much, Sharon. It's wonderful meeting you. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Take care.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
If you're interested in becoming one of our sponsors or have questions and thoughts about the podcast, please email us at thejewishdivorceproject@gmail.com.
And you can always find us on social media at the Jewish Divorce Project on Facebook and Instagram.
And if you'd like to work with me, I specialize in divorce coaching for women. I can be found at mydivorceconcierge.com and on Facebook and Instagram at mydivorceconcierge.
And if you're interested in working with me for divorce coaching or spiritual coaching, I work with people of all kinds, of all backgrounds as well. My email address is noamraucher@gmail.com. That's NOAMRAUCHER@gmail.com. And you can also find me on Facebook and on Instagram at Noam Rauscher.